Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. I found some shade so I don't melt during this interview when I'm talking to Matt Holder here. Silver and Black Pride, Tape Don't Lie, all those good stuff like that. Trying to get his thoughts about what happened in the 27-11 victory preseason game with the Raiders and Jaguars. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I can take you complaining about the weather being in San Diego, man. I'm up here in Sacramento. I'm like, come on, man.
Yo, it's funny because wherever I won't say where I work because I can't say where I work, but like where I worked, I was going to transfer to Sacramento, and they it was crazy when I drove from Sacramento to San Francisco, and I could feel the rental car getting like blazing hot. I was like, this is like Sacramento is no joke, dude. Like that's some heat right there, boy. I tell you, that's something else. Hope the AC's popping on where you live because
it is constantly.
Yeah, you have to out there. So the real regime starts obviously on September 11th when they play the Chargers. But what are your thoughts about the game against the Jaguars and what many thought was the last game for Josh Jacobs as a Raider because everybody said he was getting traded.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It seemed to come out of nowhere, but yeah. I mean, I thought for the one thing, I mean, it's obviously hard to take too much in the preseason, especially when Josh Jacobs is like the only starter that does end up playing. But I thought the biggest thing that people can take away from that at least gave me confidence was the Raiders looked more prepared and they looked like the better team on the Hall of Fame game last Thursday. I was about to say Sunday, but and that's one of the biggest things, especially when your second and third string guys are doing that. That means I got to imagine the first three is getting it down as well. And the Jaguars have had just as much time to be out there at practice as the Raiders have. Yep. And again, I mean, I think that was pretty obvious. The Raiders offense was clicking like a well-oiled machine. I think their defense started the game out maybe with back-to-back 3 and outs, something like that. They looked shut down. So I think that's the biggest thing. And, I kind of talked about this after the game of, this was a big game for Josh McDaniels, obviously coming back for his first game back as a head coach in about 10 years since his whole debacle with the Broncos, which we know didn't end well. And he was playing in his hometown too, extra special moment. I think they said on the broadcast he had like over 100 people there. His players came out and played for him. Obviously, they're battling for roster spots and all that good stuff too in their own personal battles. But I mean, to be able to come out there and dominate the way they did and get, your coach your win in what was definitely a more special game than, just your run-of-the-mill preseason game. Hopefully that means they're buying in. And from everything we're hearing, I think that's been the case so far. I mean, as far as Jacobs playing, I think someone else tweeted it out later, like, Damian Harris and immediately after, like they played like a ton of plays in the first two series of the preseason too. So this is just normal for Josh McDaniels. Ian Rappaport shot it down. I don't think anybody's got anything to worry about. I think the bigger decision comes at the offseason about what to do with him, whether or not to bring him back.
It's crazy because it seems like it was like how Kush has, some of these players have it where like now they're actually asked to play in the preseason and everybody's like questioning all the stuff. Like, like it's kind of funny.
Exactly.
As far as that goes, but in the trenches, Lester Cotton has been like the one of the darling. Every training camp there's a darling of that training camp, and he's been that. So when you talk about his performance in the trenches, I know that NFL League Pass or whatever it's called didn't do us any favors with this new All-22 situation. But could you see anything else such in that in the trenches here where you could say the Raiders might be able to run the football at the Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, with Lester Cotton specifically, like you're talking about, he really stood out as a run blocker with moving people around. I mean, to go from a guy that's been on the fringe of the roster for the last 4 years or whatever it's been to now being like a legit starter and looking like he belonged at least on Thursday. As far as the Raiders being able to run at the Chargers, I mean, the Chargers do have a great defensive line. I think they can get to them. I think their tackles aren't quite as great as their edge rushers are with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and even Kyle Van Noy as an off-ball linebacker. But I think they will be able to run, especially if they can get the looks at their interior three. We're getting getting last Thursday. I mean, Andre James had a heck of a game too, like we're talking about with Lester Cotton, and I thought John Simpson had a couple nice blocks too. So if that core three can really get at the Chargers and get to them on the ground, which is one of the weaknesses of the Chargers defense last year, I think it'd be a good thing, especially, keeping the ball away from Justin Herbert and playing a little bit of keep away from those guys.
Yeah. Let's see here. So as far as though, obviously, when people on Twitter were talking about the Raiders getting Devontae, I was just like, oh, whatever, dude. Come on, stop. Yeah. This ain't Madden. So so now that he's actually on the roster with him and Waller and Renfro, what are your thoughts about how especially if they're able to run the football? Last year, I think Damian Harris, didn't he have like 15 rushing touchdowns last year, something like that, ridiculous.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so you would think with the combination of Zamir White, we didn't talk about Zamir White, and the way he was able to play. We thoughts about that, how that's going to help the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, if course if they can get the running game going, I think that's going to be huge for them. The more single coverage you can get on Devonta Adams, the better. And if they can run the ball, then obviously that's going to take one guy out of the box. And at some point they're not going to be able to double everybody between him, Waller, and Renfro. So I definitely think that it can help, especially if they can come out in the beginning of games and run the ball. I think to start the year off, you're probably going to see a lot more light boxes, like kind of what you're hinting at a little bit with Devontae out there. You're probably going to get more DBs, more nickel packages where you only see 5-6 guys in the box. But if they can come out and run the ball, all of a sudden defensive coordinators are going to get mad and get angry, bring somebody else, bring another linebacker in, take a corner out or take a DB out, and then it's bombs away. So I definitely think those games can help marry each other. And that's one of the beauties of getting a guy like Devonta Adams, is he's literally one of those guys that you can just get and put on your offense, and he changes everything for you. He just opens it up because, again, you go back and you watch some of his coverages, like I have been at Green Bay. Teams had to play him differently. Teams normally when a team comes out in a 3-by-1 set offensively, whatever formation you have on D or whatever call you have on defense, your safety that's on the one single receiver side is going to cheat over to the 3 receivers, right? Just a math problem. But they couldn't do that. You saw safeties playing over normal, like it was a 2-by-2 formation in the normal depth, because they have to. They have to bracket them. They have to account for them. And again, that's just going to make things easier for a guy like Hunter Renfro, who works well underneath and works well in the slot. And same goes for Waller. And like I was just saying, you can only run so many coverages or so many defenses with a guy like Devontae out there out wide.
So one of the moves that I've been in Twitter Spaces and talking on my podcast the whole offseason was I wanted Patrick Graham. I was begging, and especially when they got Josh McDaniels, I was like, oh, there's a connection there. Let's go get Patrick Graham. But hopefully this is he does so good. It's only a 1-year thing, because he's such a talented defensive play caller. What are your thoughts about how he's going to use Nate Hobbs? I'm hearing Nate Hobbs, the DBs especially in his defense are really integral to what he wants to do. Nate Hobbs is playing outside a little bit more, the big physical corner. I guess him and Devonta Adams are having really good battles in preseason. Iron sharpens iron there as far as that goes. And Amik Robinson, a guy who Raider fans have really been talking about for years, maybe could find himself. He's been getting probably losing some battles and winning some battles against Renfro in the training camp as well. What are your thoughts about some of these guys, Rock Sin and Anthony Everett, some of these defensive backs that the Raiders picked up in the offseason?
It's funny you bring that up. I feel like one of the last times I was on, I remember you correctly. You were pounding the table for Patrick Graham or being excited about it. So
I wanted him in.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Hobbs, one of the things when I heard that too about Hobbs playing on the outside, I got a little bit worried because that's where he struggled in college. That's why he fell in the 5th round and was such a unheralded draft pick coming out of Illinois, is he was not that great on the outside. But part of it is he doesn't have the long speed or whatever to keep up with guys on the deeper routes. And with Patrick Graham's defense, he's going to run a lot of cover too, which is going to keep Hobbs in a underneath zone and a little bit shorter, where he's not going to have to worry about getting beat deep as much. He'll have a safety, he'll have some help, and it will be a little bit more similar to what he was playing last year with Gus Bradley, where he was closer to the line of scrimmage, didn't have to retreat and play deep quite as much. So I think that's definitely interesting, and I think that's definitely something that's going to cater to Hobbs' skill set. And then you brought up the guy Amik Robertson. I mean, to me, he's one of the biggest keys of this secondary, especially if Trayvon Mullen does not get healthy in time, which I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard any updates or anything like that. Does not sound promising. And even if he does come back, it's kind of one of those things where I don't know how much you can rely on Trayvon at this point. So, but if Amik Robertson can come in and he can come in and play the slot, I think you with him, Rocky Sin, and then Anthony Averett too, coming off the bench, that's a secondary that I think you can get by with, especially with the pass rushers that they're going to have with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. So I think that's one of the biggest things too, is if Amik can figure out how to play the slot, if he can kind of right his wrongs that are the right things that have been, ailing him in the past, get better at tackling, a little better against the run and all that stuff. That's going to be huge for that secondary. Because to be honest with you, going into training camp, the secondary is or specifically the corners was one of my biggest fears heading into camp and everything. But, again, if you can get Hobbs to play outside and play well, like he has been, like keep growing like he did last year, or building off what he did last year, then, and get Robertson to, figure things out and start to live up to some of the pre-draft hype that he was getting. Yep. That's a solid secondary. Because again, I think Rocky Sin, I think he's a good player. I think he's a great, second corner that you can really rely on too. And again, another young guy that could be ascending, and who knows, maybe could fall into that cornerback one role too.
So it looks like, people are talking about D-line and D tackle and offensive line. Is that something that like you kind of see those same holes too? I also worry about if 25 ever went down, like I feel like he and Divine Diablo are the two most, outside of obviously Crosby and Jones, the two like irreplaceable people. Like nobody can do what they do when they're off the field. Do you feel like you're satisfied with the defensive tackle situation, or you want to see them go out there and get something else?
I mean, I'd love for them to go out and get something else. I just don't know what else is out there. I mean, we've talked about Ndamukong Suh. Raiders haven't signed him, but neither. Denny
Shelton just went to the Chiefs, right?
Did he? I didn't even see that he did sign with the Chiefs. Yeah, I know they brought him in.
I think I just saw him sign with the Chiefs the other day. So,
yeah. I mean, me being a big trenches guy, I'm definitely worried about the defensive tackles. Neil Farrell Jr. is a guy that I was really hyped on coming out of LSU.
Yeah,
and was pretty uninspired with his performance in the Hall of Fame game. Just looking at the depth chart, which who knows how much it's put into it and how many reps they got him. It doesn't seem like he's doing all that well. Wasn't a guy that was running with the ones or even the twos that I can quite remember from watching the game. I think it seemed like a guy like Kyle Pekka was taking reps away from him. And especially with Jonathan Hankins on PUP right now, definitely a big concern for me is those defensive tackles. I think anybody that looking at the roster sees that's kind of the glaring hole. And especially, I haven't even brought it up with Bilal Nichols still on PUP, hoping he's going to be able to be a starter and not be able to pick up where he left off with the Bears and all that good stuff. And I mean, the secondary too, like I said at the beginning, it was one of my biggest fears going into the training camp. Gotten a little bit better hearing that Amik Robinson's playing well. And again, that Nate Hobbs is getting even better. But still, like you said, they're an injury at set to Trevon Merrick away from having a very ugly, ugly secondary. Like
talking about Reggie Nelson type secondary as far as that goes. So, but I do think Merrick has the opportunity here to really get his hands on a lot of balls this year. And for Nate Hobbs, I think didn't he play for Lovie Smith? So Lovie Smith is one of those guys who a lot of cover too as well. So he might feel right at home in this defense. But with this new regime, what is the most like excited part of it that you feel? Like I know some people have different kind of things that they like about this new regime, but what's the thing that when you see how they've been operating right now, what do you what makes you the most comfortable or the most excited about what could be new for the Raiders here?
I think it's been the emphasis on versatility. I think that's both sides of the ball. You hear Patrick Graham talk about it. You see Patrick Graham and his play calling talk about that. He's a guy that will throw three safeties out there, have one of them play deep, have one of them play in the box, and the other cover the slot. And then the next play, it'll be some other combination of that. And I think that's one of the things that I've really liked about him when he was potentially a candidate for defense coordinator. I think you mentioned this too, is he's adaptive. He changes what he wants. You ask him, I think there was an interview, you asked him, what kind of defense do you run? He's like, whatever it is that week. Yeah. Like whatever we need to.
That's true.
And I mean, you hear Josh McDaniels talk about it. Look about when they drafted Dylan Parham, who played every position on the offensive line, but center in college. And now he's playing center too. Alex Leatherwood, same thing. He's going to play right guard and right tackle. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've really loved about this whole new regimen and whole new scheme and everything. It's its versatile. They're going to change things up. It's not going to be like with Gruden where it's like, okay, this stuff worked in the first half of the season. Let's keep running it once teams pick it up. And once teams pick up on it, we don't have a counterpunch. There are going to be other things that happen, and they're going to be ever moving parts, which can be harder to learn and can be more difficult. But at the same time, you're never going to be predictable, and you're never going to be easy to figure out for an opposing defense or an offense. So that's one of the things that I think is the thing that gets me the most excited is just that versatility and how many multiple looks that they're going to give this year.
Yeah, it should be really interesting to see what happens there. And I think one thing, I mean, like the red zone numbers have to improve on offense, and I think they will. I think they'll actually throw the ball into the end zone, which was the oddest thing. That was the oddest thing about Gruden's offense, is that he never really threw the ball in the end zone, which is kind of crazy to me. The AFC West is obviously just ridiculous. I don't know why it's such a gauntlet here. What can they? Probably, it's too early for all that. I won't go into that. I'll just go into this next week. Obviously Sunday, the last preseason game of the entire slate of games. NFL Network, the Raiders play a home game against the Vikings. What are you looking for them to do? I kind of hope Thielen and Jefferson play to get some reps against the secondary as well. What should we be looking for the Raiders in this week?
Better right tackle play. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things is hopefully, kind of what you're talking about. I do kind of hope maybe Colton Miller gets some reps so we can see Brandon Parker on the right tackle a little bit, obviously get some warm-ups. Don't know if that's going to happen, but I'd like to see, someone start to really step up and cement themselves in that position, whether that be Alex Leatherwood, Brandon Parker, Thayer Munford, or Bam Adeli. I'm sure I just butchered his last name, but whoever it might be, Jermaine Illuminor, just someone start to step up. And so it's just step up and separate yourself, and not in the good way, or not in the bad way, in a good way, you know what I mean? Just come up and really kind of take command of that position, because that's obviously, you look at the Raiders offensive line right now, even with Denzel Good's retirement and them having a hole at the interior on the offensive line, that's the biggest question mark right now. If you look at the Raiders offensive line, I felt like even after one Hall of Fame game, not that I was expecting to have all the answers, but we really still don't have any much of a better idea. We just know Brandon Parker probably not going to be the best if they have to play Trevon Walker again back in November.
It's crazy because I was talking to somebody the other day, and they DM me, and they were like, if Gruden was still here, Incognito and Denzel Good would not have retired. They would still be getting paid by the Raiders, and he'd be talking about how every week, you know what, they're close, they're getting there, they're close. We'll see what happens. I kind of think that I think Leatherwood is going to be the guy. I really something tells me Leatherwood's going to be the guy, and
me too.
And Parker's going to be the swing tackle. I think that first game, if you're a fantasy football guy, I really think lean on the Raider running backs. I think they're going to try to run the football, and they're going to in that first game to kind of see, hey, can the Chargers stop the run first before they because I don't know if you want to drop back 40 times when you got no matter who your offensive linemen are, when you got Bosa and Mack out there. All right, brother.
Sure.
Thanks for coming on the podcast again. I know you guys are busy. You guys do a lot of good work over there. So keep it up, and we'll see you next time.
I appreciate you having me on. Thanks, Dwayne.
Yeah. Take care.